My name is Emma, I'm 32, and my husband is hiding in the bushes outside, trying to take pictures of me cheating on him. The joke's on him, because in about 5 minutes, I'm going to live stream his entire evil plan to all his friends on his birthday. Before I tell you about the divorce live stream that ruined his life, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. The air in the apartment is thick and still. I'm sitting on a plush sofa that isn't mine, in a living room that feels like a stranger's. Across from me, Mike shifts his weight, his eyes darting towards the window, then back to me. He's nervous. He should be. From my seat, I can just see the top of my husband Steven's head through a gap in the blinds. He thinks he's so clever, crouching in the dark like a budget-rate spy, his phone held up to capture the moment his wife falls into the trap he's so carefully set. My heart is hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the quiet room. It's not fear, though. It's adrenaline. It's the exhilarating, terrifying feeling of standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump. For 6 months, I have lived a lie. For 6 months, I have smiled and cooked and cleaned and played the part of the loving wife, all while my world had already burned to the ground. I just hadn't shown anyone the ashes yet. Tonight, there will be a bonfire. Are you ready? Mike whispers, his voice strained. I don't answer him. I just look at the phone in my hand. The screen is glowing, open to a group chat named Steven's 35th birthday bash. It's filled with all his work buddies, his college friends, the people he respects and wants to impress. They're all waiting for a celebratory message. Oh, they're going to get a celebration, all right. Just not the one they're expecting. I can feel the vibration as a new message comes through. It's from Steven, sent to his secret other phone, the one he thinks I don't know about, which is currently linked to my laptop in the other room. The message is to his mistress, Riley. Almost there, baby. The stupid cow is finally taking the bait. Freedom is so close. A cold, hard knot forms in my stomach. Stupid cow. That's what he calls me. The woman who quit her dream job to support his career, who learned to cook his mother's favorite recipes, who held his hand through every failure and celebrated every win. I take a deep, steadying breath. My hand is perfectly still as I raise the phone. Mike sees the look in my eyes and his face pales. He knows there's no turning back now. Outside, I see a rustle in the bushes. Steven is adjusting his position, getting a better angle for his money shot. The shot he thinks will win him a $3 million divorce settlement and his freedom. He has no idea that the real show is about to begin, and he's the star. I'm just the director, the producer, and the woman who is about to burn his whole world down with the press of a single button. But before we get to the fireworks, let's go back. Back to 6 months ago, when my biggest problem was what to pack for my husband's lunch. Back when I was still the stupid cow, happily living in a perfect, handcrafted lie. 6 months ago, my life was beige. It was the color of our minimalist living room walls, the expensive but boring couch Steven had picked out, and the bland, predictable rhythm of our days. I thought it was the color of peace. It was actually the color of erasure. My mornings began at 5:30 a.m. The alarm would go off, and I'd slip out of bed, careful not to wake Steven. In the quiet of the kitchen, with the first hint of dawn streaking the sky, I would perform the rituals of a good wife. I'd grind the coffee beans just the way he liked, squeeze fresh orange juice, and start on his lunch. His lunch was a work of art, a daily love letter packed in a sleek bento box. I'd spend hours on Sunday planning the menu for the week. Monday might be teriyaki salmon with seasoned edamame and a side of fresh mango. Tuesday, grilled chicken skewers with a quinoa salad and roasted vegetables. I never repeated a meal in the same month. I'd even leave little notes inside, tucked under the lid. Have a great day, honey, or can't wait for you to come home. Simple, loving gestures. I'd have his suit pressed and laid out, his favorite tie chosen, his briefcase by the door. By the time he woke up at 7, the house would smell of coffee and toast, and I'd be there with a smile, ready to hear about his day ahead. You spoil me, he'd say, kissing my forehead before he left, the bento box in his hand. I don't know what I'd do without you. For the first 4 years of our marriage, those words were my fuel. They made the sacrifices worth it. I had been a promising architect, but Stephen's career in finance was taking off, and it required a lot of travel and networking. It's just for a few years, he'd said. Once I make partner, you can go back to building your dream. We'll be set for life. So, I'd put my portfolio away and focused on building his life instead. I became the perfect corporate wife. What I didn't know is that as soon as Stephen got to his polished office downtown, my love letter would go straight into the trash. He'd walk into the break room, dump the contents of the bento box into the bin, and then meticulously wash the container until it sparkled. He couldn't have his colleagues seeing his wife's home-cooked meals. It didn't fit the image of the high-flying, independent man he was trying to project. He'd then go out for a 2-hour lunch with his coworkers, usually at some trendy steakhouse, charging it all to the company card. I know this now, of course. But back then, I was oblivious. I'd get a text around noon. Lunch was delicious, Best wife ever. And I would smile, feeling a little flutter of pride in my quiet, beige house. The evenings were just as much of a performance. He'd come home, hand me the empty, gleaming bento box, and give me a tired sigh. Brutal day, he'd say, loosening his tie. While I'd prepare dinner, he'd be in his home office, taking a few more calls. Those calls were to her. To Riley. I didn't know her name then. To me, she was just a series of late-night whispers and hushed tones I mistook for work stress. No, she has no idea, I once overheard him say as I passed his office. I paused, my heart skipping a beat. He looked up, saw me, and his face changed. Yeah, the marketing team has no idea what they're doing with the new campaign, he said smoothly into the phone. I'll handle it tomorrow. Love you. He hung up, but the last 2 words hung in the air. Who was that? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Just my mom, he said, not missing a beat. You know how she is. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband. The man I had promised to love and trust. I was a good wife. I was supportive. I was loyal. And I was a complete and utter fool. The lie was perfect, and I was its most willing participant, happily arranging the furniture in a house that was already structurally unsound, about to collapse on top of me. The first cracks were about to appear, and they would start with the simplest, most human desire of all. The crack appeared on a Tuesday. I remember the date, the weather, everything. It was a beautiful spring evening, and I'd made Stephen's favorite, pan-seared scallops with a lemon butter sauce. We were sitting at our ridiculously long dining table, the one he'd insisted on buying, and a thought that had been quietly growing in my mind for months finally found its voice. Stephen, I said, setting my fork down. I've been thinking a lot lately. We're in a good place, you're doing so well at work. I think I'm ready. He looked up from his plate, a blank expression on his face. Ready for what? To start a family, I said, a hopeful smile spreading across my face. I think it's time we had a baby. The reaction was not what I expected. For a split second, a flash of pure, unadulterated panic crossed his face. It was gone almost instantly, replaced by a carefully constructed mask of thoughtful concern, but I saw it. It was like seeing a monster peek out from behind a curtain for just a moment before hiding again. Wow, A baby, he said slowly, putting his own fork down. He reached across the table and took my hand. His skin was cold. That's a big step. Are you sure? With your plans to get back into architecture? I can do both, I said, my smile faltering slightly. Lots of women do. It'll be an adjustment, but we can make it work. Of course, he said, squeezing my hand. You're right. Let me think about it. I just want to make sure we're 100% prepared to give our child the best life possible. The conversation ended there, but the image of that panic in his eyes stayed with me. He hadn't been worried about being prepared. He had been terrified. The next day at his office, his terror turned into a vile, calculated plan. He was having lunch with a colleague, Mike. Mike was one of those guys who was always just a little too loud, a little too flashy. He was good at his job, but he lived beyond his means, always talking about the next big purchase he was saving for. Steven, as he often did, was complaining about me. I'm telling you, man, it's like living with a glorified, high-maintenance housekeeper, Steven said, swirling the wine in his glass. She wants a baby now. A baby! Can you believe it? My career is just taking off, and she wants to anchor me down. Mike laughed. Doesn't sound so bad. A hot wife who cooks and cleans. Some guys would kill for that. If you don't want her, I'll take her. Steven let out a short, ugly laugh. The sound was sharp and cruel. Be my guest. She's just used goods anyway. Those 3 words. Used goods. That's how he saw me. A depreciating asset. Not a partner, not a wife, not a person. An object. Mike's eyes lit up with a greedy spark. Seriously? You'd be fine with that? And that's when the monster behind the curtain stepped out for good. Steven leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He knew Mike was desperate for cash. He'd been eyeing a vintage Porsche that cost nearly $1 million. He also knew the prenuptial agreement we had. It was ironclad. If either of us cheated, the other party would get a massive settlement. Given our current assets, if I cheated on him, I would walk away with nothing, and he would get to keep everything, including a $3 million penalty payout from my family trust. Listen to me, Steven said, his eyes gleaming. You need money. I need a clean, profitable exit from this marriage. You seduce my wife. Get proof. Photos, texts, anything. Make her the one who cheats. Mike stared at him, stunned. You're serious? Dead serious, Steven said. She cheats on me, I get the settlement. $3 million. From that, I give you $1 million. Cash. You get your car, and I get my freedom. Everybody wins. The air crackled with the filth of their transaction. My life, my love, my body, all reduced to a business deal struck over a steak lunch. Mike, with his mountain of debt and expensive taste, didn't hesitate for long. Okay, Mike said, a slow, predatory grin spreading across his face. I'm in. How do we do this? Steven leaned back in his chair, a triumphant smirk on his lips. He took a sip of his wine, the picture of a man who had just solved all his problems. He had just hired a man to destroy his wife's life for a commission. The trap was set. Now, all they needed was for the bait to bite. The change was subtle at first. So subtle, I thought I was imagining it. Steven became the perfect, attentive husband overnight. He started agreeing with me about the baby, talking about turning the spare room into a nursery, even bringing home paint swatches. He was laying the groundwork, making sure that when the bomb finally dropped, everyone would see me as the ungrateful, cheating wife who threw away a perfect marriage. But when you live with someone, you learn their rhythms, their habits, the small, unconscious patterns of their life. And Steven's rhythm was off. It started in the kitchen. I'd bought a jar of his favorite smoked paprika. He was obsessed with it, putting it on everything from eggs to chicken. A few days later, I was cooking and reached for it. The jar was in the front of the spice rack, exactly where I'd left it, but the safety seal under the cap was still intact. It hadn't been opened. Yet, when I'd asked him how the chicken I'd packed for his lunch was, he'd said, amazing, The smoked paprika was perfect. A tiny, cold drop of confusion fell into my gut. I brushed it off. Maybe he had an old jar he finished first. It was a stupid, small thing. But the small things started adding up. A week later, I was doing laundry. I picked up his hamper and it felt lighter than usual. Steven worked out every morning. There should have been a set of gym clothes in there. There wasn't. I found his gym bag in the closet, and the clothes inside were bone dry and smelled faintly of his cologne, not sweat. It was as if he'd just put them on and taken them off. The cold drop in my stomach grew into a slushy, uneasy feeling. I was standing in our laundry room, surrounded by the scent of clean linen, and suddenly felt like a trespasser in my own life. The breaking point came on a Thursday. He came home late, looking flustered. "Sorry, honey," he said, kissing my cheek. "Had to work late, then the car was making a weird noise so I took it to the shop. Just got it back." He smelled strongly of the fresh, piney scent of a car wash. Later that evening, I was gathering the clothes for the wash. I picked up the shirt he'd worn that day. It was wrapped bizarrely inside a bath towel, bundled up like a secret. I unrolled it. The scent hit me first. It wasn't my perfume, or the laundry detergent, or even his cologne. It was a heavy, floral scent. Sweet and cheap. The kind of perfume that lingers in a room long after the person has left. My hands started to tremble. I brought the shirt closer, scanning the fabric under the dim light of the laundry room. And then I saw it. It was almost invisible against the white cotton of his collar. A single strand of hair. It was long, much longer than mine, and it wasn't my shade of brunette. It was a bright, artificial red. The color of a fire engine. I just stood there, staring at it. The shirt felt heavy in my hands. The world seemed to slow down, the hum of the washing machine fading into a dull roar in my ears. It was just one hair. It could have come from anywhere. An elevator, a coworker brushing past him in the hall, a seat on the subway. My mind scrambled for a rational explanation, for any reason not to believe what I was seeing. But I knew. In that silent, gut-wrenching moment, I knew. It wasn't from an elevator. The smell of the perfume, the suspiciously clean gym clothes, the unopened spice jar, the way he'd been looking at me lately, not with love, but with a kind of detached pity. It all clicked into place. The small, stupid things suddenly weren't small or stupid at all. They were threads. And I had just pulled the first one, unraveling the edge of the beautiful tapestry of my marriage to reveal the ugly, rotten canvas underneath. When I held that single red hair in my hand, it felt like my whole world just crumbled. I wonder if anyone else has ever felt that soul-crushing moment of betrayal? If you're listening and you know what I'm talking about, just leave a 1 in the comments. I really need to know I'm not alone in this. For a long time, I just stood in the laundry room, the red hair still pinched between my thumb and forefinger. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt strangely, terrifyingly calm. The emotional part of my brain just shut down, and a different part, a colder, more logical part one barely knew existed, took over. My first instinct, the one that screamed in the back of my mind, was to run into the living room, wave the shirt in his face, and demand an explanation. I wanted to see him squirm, to catch him in the lie. But then what? He'd deny it. He'd call me crazy, jealous, insecure. He'd twist it around until I was the one apologizing. I had seen him do it to others. He was a master manipulator. A single hair wasn't proof, it was just an invitation for him to build a better lie. No. Confrontation was a fool's game. To beat a liar like Steven, you couldn't play his game. You had to create a new one, with new rules that only you knew. That night, as he slept beside me, snoring softly, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The man whose breathing had once soothed me to sleep now sounded like a monster in my ear. My grief was a physical weight on my chest, but beneath it, something else was stirring. A slow, burning rage. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was making a fool of me. He was living a double life in my home, on my time, with my love as his cover. He thought I was weak. He thought I was stupid. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. The next morning, I woke up a different woman. I still made his coffee. I still packed his lunch. I still kissed him goodbye at the door. But the smile on my face was a mask, and behind it, my mind was a whirlwind of calculations. My first stop was the internet. I spent hours researching my search history, a paranoid's diary, best micro-spy cameras, long-life audio listening devices, how to legally obtain evidence of infidelity. I used a public library computer, of course. I wasn't a complete amateur. I ordered a kit online, using a prepaid credit card and having it delivered to a P.O. box I opened that afternoon. The kit was terrifyingly professional. It had cameras hidden in a smoke detector, a digital clock, and even a USB wall charger. The audio bug was no bigger than a grain of rice. Installing it all was the most nerve-wracking experience of my life. One Saturday, when Stephen was out for his golf game, which I now knew was a lie, I turned our home into a surveillance state. The smoke detector camera went in our bedroom, with a perfect view of the bed. The clock camera went in the living room. The USB charger, my personal favorite, I plugged into the outlet right next to his side of the bed. He'd probably use it to charge his phone, never suspecting it was watching his every move. The final piece was the audio bug. I took his favorite tie, a navy silk one I had bought him for our anniversary, and carefully, with tweezers and a magnifying glass, I sewed the tiny device into the thick fabric at the back. He wore that tie to every important meeting. Now, he would be my inside man. The last step of my initial plan was the hardest. I made an appointment with my family doctor. I put on my most pathetic, exhausted face. I told him I was stressed, that the pressure of trying for a baby was getting to me, that I couldn't sleep. I just lie awake all night, my mind racing, I said, my voice cracking on cue. He was sympathetic and wrote me a prescription for a mild sleeping aid. Just take one when you really need it, Emma, he advised. I picked up the prescription on my way home. I had no intention of taking the pills myself. They were for a different purpose entirely. They were my secret weapon. Walking back into my house that day, I felt a strange sense of power. Stephen had no idea that the walls now had eyes, that his favorite tie had ears, and that his doting wife was secretly an intelligence agent plotting his downfall. It was a terrifying decision, a step into a dark, unknown territory. I was no longer just a wife, I was a strategist. That was the hardest decision I ever had to make. To stop being a victim and start fighting back. I knew that no matter what happened next, my life would never be the same. If you're still with me, please comment keep going to let me know you're here. I really need that support to share the hardest part of my story. The first few days after planting the bugs were excruciating. I was a nervous wreck, jumping every time my phone buzzed with a notification. I was obsessed with checking the feeds, watching the empty rooms of my house, listening to the static from the bug in his tie. It was mostly boring, the drone of office conversation, the rustle of papers, the clinking of glasses at a business lunch. I started to think I was crazy. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe the hair really was just a stray, and the unopened spice jar was a simple mistake. I was on the verge of taking everything down, of confessing to my paranoia and begging for a return to my beige, blissful ignorance. Then came the recording that changed everything. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Stephen wore the navy silk tie. I got the notification that the bug was picking up clear audio, so I slipped out of the house and drove to a nearby park. I couldn't risk listening at home. I sat in my parked car, the engine off, and put in my earbuds. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely press play. The recording started with the muffled sound of a car door closing. Then I heard Stephen's voice, clear as day. "Thanks for meeting me. A second voice answered, one I vaguely recognized from his office parties. It was Mike. No problem. What's so urgent? They were in a car together. I could hear the faint sound of the radio playing in the background. My blood ran cold. It's about the Emma situation, Steven said, his voice low and urgent. It's been 2 weeks, man. What's the hold up? You making any progress? My breath caught in my throat. The Emma situation? Mike sighed. It was a heavy, weary sound. I'm trying, Steven. She's not easy. She's nice. She's a good person. It feels scummy. A harsh, humorless laugh erupted from Steven. Scummy? We're way past scummy, pal. Did you forget the deal? Or do I need to remind you about that Porsche you can't stop drooling over? My mind was reeling. A deal? What deal? I haven't forgotten, Mike said defensively. But you have to be subtle about this. If she gets suspicious, the whole thing is blown. I don't have time for subtle. Steven snapped. His voice was sharp, cruel, completely different from the gentle tone he used with me. My promotion review is in 3 months. I need to be seen as a stable, settled family man to get it. But the second I get that promotion, I'm done. I can't spend the rest of my life with that boring woman. I need out. And I need out with my assets intact. The words hit me like physical blows. Boring woman. I need out. Just get her into bed, Mike, Steven continued, his voice a venomous whisper. That's all I need. 1 picture. 1 text message. The moment you do, that $1 million is yours, and I get my freedom and the other $3 million from the settlement. Just get it done. $1 million. $3 million. I ripped the earbuds out of my ears, gasping for air. The park, the sunshine, the laughing children on the swings, it all seemed to fade to gray. I was going to be sick. It wasn't just an affair. It was so much worse. It was a conspiracy. A cold, calculated business transaction where I was the product being sold. My husband, the man I loved, was paying his colleague $1 million to seduce me, to trick me into infidelity, so he could divorce me, take all our money, and secure a promotion at work. The pain was unimaginable. It was a physical sensation, a white-hot agony that spread from my chest through my entire body. It wasn't the heartbreak of being cheated on. It was the horror of realizing my entire life, my entire marriage, was a sham. I wasn't a wife. I was an obstacle. A problem to be solved with $1 million payout. I sat in that car for over an hour, just staring at the steering wheel. The tears never came. The rage was too strong, too pure. It burned the sadness away, leaving behind something hard and sharp and dangerous. He didn't want a divorce. He wanted to destroy me. He wanted to humiliate me, paint me as the villain, and walk away with a fortune. Fine. Game on. He thought he was the puppet master, pulling the strings. He had no idea I could hear every whisper, see every move. He wanted a war? I would give him a war he would never forget. And I would be the one to burn his kingdom to the ground. The recording from the tie was the key, but my lawyer, Mr. Davis, a stern man with kind eyes, told me it wasn't enough. An audio recording obtained without consent could be challenged in court. He needed something more. He needed concrete, undeniable proof of the affair with the mystery woman with the red hair. He needed a name, and he needed evidence linking her directly to Steven. Find out who she is, Emma, he advised, his face grim. Get messages, photos, anything that proves he was having an affair before he initiated this disgusting plan with Mike. We need to establish a pattern of deceit. So, I became a detective. I started watching the camera feeds religiously. For weeks, nothing. Steven was careful. He never brought her to our house. He used a burner phone. But he was also arrogant, and arrogance makes men sloppy. The slip-up came during a house party Steven insisted we throw for his department. I hated the idea, hated having to smile and play hostess in a home that felt like a crime scene, but I knew it was an opportunity. I watched him all night, a hawk tracking its prey. He was charming, attentive, the perfect husband. But his eyes kept darting to one person. A woman standing by the bar. She had a mane of fiery red hair. Her name, I learned from a coworker, was Riley. She was a new analyst in his department. She was loud, laughed a little too hard at his jokes, and touched his arm a little too often. It was her. I knew it in my bones. Now I had a name. The next step was getting the proof. I knew a direct confrontation was useless. I had to get into her phone. And to do that, I had to get close to her. I devised a plan that made my stomach churn with its duplicity. A few days after the party, I called Steven's office, asking to speak to him. The receptionist put me on hold. While I waited, I heard her say, "Riley, can you grab line 2? It's Steven's wife." I hung up immediately. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hi, is this Emma?" a cheerful voice asked. "This is Riley from Steven's office." "You called?" "He's in a meeting, but I can take a message." Bingo. She had taken the bait, trying to insert herself. "Oh, hi Riley," I said, injecting as much warmth and friendliness into my voice as I could muster. "It's so nice to hear from you. Actually, I was calling for you. I felt so bad we didn't get a chance to talk more at the party. I was thinking, maybe we could grab a coffee or a drink sometime. I'm trying to make more friends in the city." There was a surprised silence on the other end. "Oh. Wow. Yeah, that would be great." We set a date for drinks at her apartment that Friday. She suggested it, eager to get me on her home turf. Perfect. I arrived at her place with a bottle of expensive wine and a stomach full of dread. Her apartment was a mess of pink and glitter, a stark contrast to my beige prison. She was overly friendly, complimenting my dress, my hair, my shoes. It was nauseating. We made small talk. I let her do most of the talking, asking her about work, about her life, all while my heart pounded. In my purse, I had a small vial containing 2 of the sleeping pills I'd gotten from my doctor, crushed into a fine, colorless powder. The opportunity came when she went to the bathroom. My hands were shaking as I quickly pulled out the vial and tipped the powder into her glass of white wine. It dissolved instantly, leaving no trace. My hands were sweating. This was insane. It was illegal. But the image of Steven's cruel laugh from the recording flashed in my mind, and my resolve hardened. She came back, picked up her glass, and took a long sip. We kept talking, though I can't remember about what. My entire being was focused on that glass. After about 20 minutes, her speech started to slur. Her eyelids grew heavy. "Whoa," she said, blinking slowly. "Guess I'm more tired than I thought." She tried to stand up, swayed, and then slumped back onto the couch, her eyes rolling back. She was out cold. My heart was racing. I had a limited window. I grabbed her phone from the coffee table. It was locked with a 6-digit passcode. My mind went blank with panic. What could it be? I tried her birthday, found from a quick social media search. No luck. I tried 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nothing. Then, a cold, sickening thought occurred to me. I typed in 6 numbers, Steven's birthday. 0-8-1-9-8-8. The phone unlocked. A wave of nausea washed over me. Of course. Her entire life revolved around him. I quickly went to her photo gallery. It was all there. A hidden album also locked with his birthday, titled My King. It was filled with hundreds of pictures, them on vacation, them in hotel rooms, them kissing. The dates on the photos went back over a year, long before he had cooked up his scheme with Mike. Then I opened her texts. I scrolled back, my stomach twisting with every message. Can't wait to get rid of the ball and chain, one from Stephen read. 2 more months, baby, and we'll be married, read another. They had a whole future planned, a wedding, a life built on the ashes of mine. I took pictures of everything with my own phone. Every incriminating photo, every vile text message. I had it all. The proof Mr. Davis needed. I stood up, my legs shaky, and let myself out of her apartment, leaving her snoring on the couch. Walking out into the cool night air, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt empty. The truth was uglier than I could have ever imagined. But now, I had the weapon I needed. And I was ready to use it. With the evidence from Riley's phone secured, a part of me thought the worst was over. I had the proof. I could go to my lawyer, file for divorce, and expose Stephen for the monster he was. But Mr. Davis urged caution. "This is excellent, Emma," he said, looking over the photos on my phone. "This establishes his motive. But the plan with Mike is a separate crime. It's conspiracy to commit fraud. To nail him completely, we need to let that play out a little longer. We need to catch him in the act of trying to frame you." So, I had to keep playing the game. I had to continue being the clueless, doting wife, all while knowing my husband was actively plotting my ruin. It was psychological torture. Meanwhile, Stephen was getting antsy. His plan wasn't moving fast enough, and his impatience made him sloppy. He started pushing Mike harder. I knew this because I was still listening to the bug tie. "What is taking so long?" I heard Stephen hiss at Mike one afternoon. "It's been weeks. Are you even trying?" "I am trying." Mike's voice was defensive. "She's always busy, or she's tired. She's a married woman, Stephen, not a barfly. It takes time to build trust." Because of this pressure, Mike's attempts became more frequent and more obvious. He started showing up at my favorite coffee shop. He'd text me articles he thought I'd find interesting. He was following the Seducer's handbook, and it was pathetic. I played along, acting flattered but distant, giving him just enough encouragement to keep him on the hook. But something was shifting. I could see it in his eyes. The cocky, predatory glint he'd had at the beginning was fading, replaced by something that looked guilty. The confession came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. He had asked me to meet for coffee, under the guise of wanting my professional opinion on a marketing proposal. We sat at a small table by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. He was rambling about market shares and demographics, but his heart wasn't in it. I decided to give him a little push. "Is everything okay, Mike?" I asked, my voice soft. "You seem distracted." He stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. Really looked at me. And for the first time, I don't think he saw a target. He saw a person. He let out a long, heavy sigh. "Emma, can I be honest with you?" "Of course," I said, my heart starting to beat a little faster. He stared down at his coffee cup, unable to meet my eyes. "This whole thing, with your marriage." "Stephen talks. A lot. He tells me things." "What kind of things?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He looked up, and his eyes were full of a strange mix of pity and shame. "Look, this is none of my business, but you're a good person. You deserve to be happy. And you're not going to be happy with him." He took a shaky breath and then the words came tumbling out. "He doesn't want the same things you want, Emma. He complained to me about the baby thing. He said he never wanted kids. He said the only reason he married you was because having a wife, a stable family life, made him look more reliable to the senior partners at the firm. It was about getting his promotion. The coffee shop disappeared. The sound of the rain, the smell of roasted beans, the murmur of other conversations, it all vanished. There was only Mike's voice, and the devastating weight of his words. I knew Steven was a cheater. I knew he was a con artist. But this was a different level of betrayal. Our entire marriage, from the very beginning, from the moment he proposed, had been a strategic career move. The vows, the home we built, the future I dreamed of, it was all a lie. I wasn't his wife. I was a stepping stone. A prop in the stage play of his ambition. Tears welled up in my eyes, hot and unstoppable. These weren't the calculated, fake tears I'd practiced. These were real. A raw, ragged sob escaped my lips. It was the sound of a heart breaking, not with a crack, but with a final, shattering explosion. Mike reached across the table, his hand hovering over mine before he pulled it back. Emma, I'm so sorry, he whispered, his face pale. I shouldn't have said anything. I'm such an idiot. He thought my tears were just for the revelation about the baby and the promotion. He had no idea I was crying for the $1 million conspiracy, for the red-headed mistress, for the whole rotten, despicable truth he was a part of. He was trying to be a good guy, confessing a small sin, completely unaware that I knew he was neck-deep in a much larger one. I just shook my head, unable to speak, letting the tears fall. They were tears of grief, yes, but also tears of clarity. The last shred of doubt, the last glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, some part of our marriage had been real, was gone. Steven had never loved me. It was the most painful truth of all. And it was the one that finally set me free. The game had to end. And I knew exactly how to end it. The tears in the coffee shop were a turning point. Mike's partial confession, meant to wound me, had instead armed me. His guilt was now a weapon I could use. He saw my devastation and believed it was the opening he needed. In his mind, the grieving wife was now vulnerable, ready to fall into the arms of a sympathetic man. He was playing checkers while I was playing chess. That evening, I went home and put the final phase of my plan into motion. I needed to get Steven and Riley together in our house, on camera. And I needed to do it in a way that made Steven believe he was the one in control. I started by calling Mike. I pitched my voice to sound fragile, broken. Mike? It's Emma, I whispered, as if I was afraid of being overheard. I can't stop thinking about what you said. You were right. You were right about everything. I feel so stupid. Emma, don't say that, he said, his voice full of concern. It was a good act. I can't stay here tonight, I said, letting a fake sob catch in my throat. I can't even look at him. Can I come over? Just to talk. I don't know who else to turn to. I could almost hear the triumphant smirk in his voice. Of course, Emma. My door is always open for you. Come over whenever you're ready. Check. The pawn was in position. 1 hour later, I packed a small overnight bag, making sure Steven saw me. I put on the performance of a lifetime. My face was pale, my eyes red-rimmed. Where are you going? He asked, his voice laced with that fake concern he was so good at. I'm going to my sister's, I lied, my voice trembling. I need some space to think, Steven. About us. About everything. He rushed over, wrapping his arms around me. Emma, no, please don't go. We can talk this out. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. It was nauseating, feeling his hands on me, knowing he was paying another man to do the same. I pulled away gently. I just need one night, Steven. Please. I walked out the door without looking back. I didn't go to my sister's, of course. I drove to a hotel a few blocks from Mike's apartment, a room I had booked that afternoon. From there, I had a perfect view of my own home security cameras and complete control of the narrative. I waited for 30 minutes, giving him enough time to believe I was gone. Then, I made the second call. To him. "Steven?" I said, my voice still shaky. I'm not at my sister's. I'm at Mike's." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then, I heard it. A small, suppressed sound. He was trying not to laugh. He thought he had one. "Oh, Emma," he said, his voice dripping with false disappointment. "I see. I'm just so confused," I sobbed. "He's been so kind to me, Steven. He listens." "You do what you have to do, Emma," he said, the fake magnanimity in his tone making me want to vomit. "We'll talk tomorrow." He hung up. I knew exactly what he would do next. I switched my focus to the camera feed from our living room. Sure enough, not even 60 seconds later, he was on his phone, pacing back and forth, a massive, triumphant grin on his face. He was calling Riley. "Baby, you are not going to believe this," he crowed, practically shouting into the phone. "It's happening. It's finally happening. The stupid cow is at Mike's place right now. She totally fell for it." I watched as he strutted around the living room I had decorated, filled with the furniture I had chosen. He was like a king surveying his newly conquered territory. "Get over here right now," he said into the phone. "Bring the champagne. We are celebrating tonight. We are celebrating our freedom." I watched on the screen as, less than 20 minutes later, Riley arrived. She ran into his arms, and they shared a long, passionate kiss in the middle of our living room. The clock camera I had hidden on the mantelpiece captured every second of it. They drank champagne. They danced on our wedding rug. They ended up in our bedroom. My smoke detector camera recorded it all in crystal clear HD. I sat in that sterile hotel room, watching my husband celebrate my infidelity with his mistress in our marital bed, and I felt nothing. No pain. No jealousy. Just the cold, calm satisfaction of a general watching her enemy walk directly into a perfectly laid ambush. He thought this was his victory party. He had no idea it was his wake. The trap was sprung. Now, all that was left to do was to lower the cage. The next evening, I drove to Mike's apartment. This was it. The final act. I had the videos of Steven and Riley saved to a secure cloud server. I had the audio from the tie. I had the text messages from Riley's phone. And now, I was about to get the final piece, a live confession. I walked into his apartment, playing the part of the distraught wife to the hilt. He was all sympathy and gentle touches, offering me a drink, guiding me to the couch. Outside, I knew Steven was already in position, hiding in the bushes across the street, his phone ready. He'd texted me earlier, a pathetic attempt at reverse psychology. "Emma, I know you're hurting, but please don't do something you'll regret." He wanted me to think he was the victim, the poor husband being cheated on. The audacity was breathtaking. Mike sat next to me on the couch. He put a comforting arm around my shoulder. This was the moment he had been paid $1 million for. "It's okay, Emma," he said softly, his voice a low murmur. "You're safe here. You can tell me anything." He started to lean in, his face moving closer to mine. This was the signal. This was the money shot Steven was waiting for. But instead of closing my eyes or turning away, I held up my phone, the screen facing him. His eyes widened in confusion. On the screen, he wasn't looking at my home screen. He was looking at his own shocked face. I was recording. "What are you doing?" he stammered, pulling back instantly. "Smile, Mike," I said, my voice suddenly devoid of any fragility. It was cold, hard, and sharp as glass. We're live. Say hi to all of Steven's friends. I turned the phone slightly so he could see the group chat, Steven's 35th birthday bash, and the little red box in the corner that said live. His face, which was already pale, turned the color of ash. Pure terror flooded his eyes. What is this?" he whispered, his voice shaking. "What have you done?" "I know everything," I said simply. "I know about the $1 million deal. I know about the Porsche. I know that my husband hired you to destroy my life so he could get a promotion and a $3 million settlement. I know it all." He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He was speechless. "So now you have a choice, Mike," I continued, my voice calm and steady. "Right now, on this live stream, you can either tell everyone the truth, the whole truth, about the disgusting plan you and my husband cooked up. Or you can go down with him. I have enough evidence to ruin you both, to make sure neither of you ever works in this city again. I will file a police report for conspiracy to commit fraud. I will sue you for every penny you have and every penny you ever will have. So, you tell me. What's it going to be?" I held the phone up, the camera aimed directly at his terrified face. Outside, I imagined Steven, still crouching in the bushes, wondering why he wasn't getting the kiss he was waiting for. He had no idea his entire world was imploding just a few hundred feet away, broadcast live for his closest friends to see. Mike looked from my face to the phone and back again. He swallowed hard. The fight went out of him completely, replaced by a desperate, pathetic plea for self-preservation. He opened his mouth and began to talk. He told them everything. This was the moment that changed everything, when I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for sticking with me to this point, you are amazing. Please help me by liking this video and commenting too down below, just so I know you made it this far with me. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey. The date for our divorce hearing was set for August 19th, Steven's 35th birthday. He didn't find the irony amusing. He walked into the courtroom with a swagger. He thought he had me cornered. He had photos, grainy, long-distance shots of me entering and leaving Mike's apartment. He had Mike, who he thought would testify that I had come onto him. He thought this was a slam dunk. He was about to walk away a rich, single man. He even had the gall to wink at me as he sat down at the opposing table. I just smiled back. A calm, serene smile. I had arranged a few special guests for his birthday celebration. In the back of the courtroom sat his mother, whom I had called and tearfully told I needed her support. Next to her was Riley, and Riley's own mother. I had sent them anonymous invitations, promising them a front row seat to Steven's future. The proceedings began. Steven's lawyer presented his case first, painting me as a cold, unfaithful wife who had thrown away a perfect marriage. He presented the photos of me at Mike's building as evidence. When it was our turn, my lawyer, Mr. Davis, stood up. He was the picture of calm professionalism. "Your Honor," he began, "my client does not deny visiting Mr. Johnson's apartment. In fact, she has a much clearer video of what happened inside." A large screen was wheeled into the courtroom. Steven's confident smirk began to falter. He shot a confused look at Mike, who was sitting in the gallery, refusing to meet his eyes. Mr. Davis pressed a button on a remote. The screen flickered to life. It was the live stream from Mike's apartment. The whole courtroom watched in stunned silence as Mike, his face pale and sweaty, confessed the entire $1 million scheme. The audio was crystal clear. We heard Steven's name, the details of the deal, the motivation behind it. A collective gasp went through the room. I looked over at Steven. The color had drained from his face. His mouth was hanging open. He looked at his mother, whose hand was covering her mouth in horror. "But wait, Your Honor," Mr. Davis said, pausing the video. "There's more." The screen changed. Now, It was displaying the footage from the hidden camera in my living room. The footage of Stephen and Riley kissing passionately just hours after I had left the house. Then came the footage from the bedroom. The courtroom was filled with the sounds of Stephen and Riley's celebration, their laughter echoing in the silent room. Riley let out a small, strangled sob. Her mother looked at her with pure disgust. Stephen's mother was openly weeping. Stephen just stared at the screen, his swagger completely gone, replaced by the look of a trapped animal. As you can see, Your Honor, Mr. Davis said calmly, Mr. Miller was not the victim in this marriage. He was the perpetrator of a calculated, fraudulent scheme to cheat my client out of her rightful assets. The judge looked at Stephen with an expression of utter contempt. It was over. I had won. But then, Riley, in a last, desperate act, stood up. I'm pregnant, she shrieked, her voice hysterical. It's Stephen's baby. You can't do this to him. Stephen's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. For a moment, a flicker of hope crossed his face. A baby could complicate the settlement. Mr. Davis didn't even flinch. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, this is a baseless and desperate claim. However, if Ms. Davis is indeed pregnant, we welcome a court-ordered paternity test. And of course, if she is, we will be petitioning to have the entire prenuptial agreement re-evaluated to include a substantial child support provision that will last for the next 18 years. The hope on Stephen's face died instantly. The thought of being tied to this hysterical woman for 2 decades was a fate worse than death to him. He slumped in his chair, utterly defeated. The judge banged his gavel. The divorce was granted. The settlement was enforced. Stephen was ordered to pay me the full $3 million. He looked over at me, his eyes pleading. I just gave him one last, small smile, stood up, and walked out of the courtroom, not once looking back. Happy birthday, Stephen. Winning in court was a victory, but the real consequences of Stephen's actions played out in the days and weeks that followed. The story of the birthday divorce hearing, complete with a live-streamed confession and hidden camera footage, became the stuff of legend at his firm. It was a scandal of epic proportions. He was called into a meeting with the senior partners, the very men he had tried to impress by projecting the image of a stable family man. He was fired on the spot. The promotion he had sold his soul for vanished, along with his career, his reputation, and his 6-figure salary. Riley faced a similar fate. She was a nurse, and when the story got out, an anonymous source, me, sent a summary of the events to her hospital's ethics board. They launched an internal investigation into her conduct. Deceit, conspiracy, and attempting to blackmail someone with a fake pregnancy were not qualities they looked for in their nursing staff. She was fired and had her nursing license suspended pending further review. She moved into what was once my house with Stephen, but their celebratory mood was long gone. The house that had been the backdrop for their victory party was now a pressure cooker of failure and resentment. I know this because Mike, in a fit of guilt-ridden confession, told me everything. Stephen was a ghost, wandering the empty rooms, drinking heavily. He couldn't look at Riley without seeing the architect of his downfall. The thrill of the affair had curdled into disgust. The final nail in their toxic coffin came about a week after the hearing. Riley, still clinging to the desperate hope that she could salvage the situation, admitted the truth. I'm not pregnant, she confessed, her voice small. I lied. I thought it would help you. She then told him how she had faked it, using a discarded item from a friend who was actually pregnant. The details were sordid and pathetic. For Stephen, this was the final straw. This wasn't the sexy, adventurous mistress he had risked everything for. This was a desperate, unstable woman who was just as deceitful as he was. He was terrified of her. That night, while she was sleeping, he packed a bag and left. He just disappeared, leaving her alone in the big, empty house that the bank would soon repossess. He ended up in a cheap, run-down apartment on the other side of town, drinking away the last of his savings. One night, he found it. Tucked away in a box of things he'd taken from the house was a small, leather-bound notebook. It was my recipe book. The one where I had carefully written down all his favorite meals, with little notes in the margins about how to make them just right. Add extra garlic, he loves it. Don't overcook the salmon, he likes it pink inside. He sat on the floor of his miserable apartment, flipping through the pages, and he finally broke down. He wept. Not for me, I don't think. He wept for the comfortable, easy life he had destroyed. He wept for the warm meals, the clean shirts, the doting wife who had managed his entire world so he didn't have to. He wept for himself. It was a pathetic, selfish kind of grief, but it was all he was capable of. The kingdom he had tried to build was nothing but rubble, and he was left as the king of the ashes. Life after the divorce was quiet. I used the settlement money to buy a small, beautiful condo downtown and finally reopened my architecture firm. Work became my sanctuary. It was healing to build things again, to create strong, beautiful structures from scratch after my own life had been so thoroughly demolished. I didn't hear from Mike for a long time, and I was grateful for that. But about 6 months after the hearing, our paths crossed again in the most violent and unexpected way. I was leaving my office late one night when I saw a figure emerge from the shadows of the parking garage. It was Riley. Her fiery red hair was matted, her eyes were wild and full of a crazed hatred. She blamed me for everything, for her lost job, her lost man, her ruined life. She lunged at me, screaming, something sharp and metallic flashing in her hand. It was a pair of scissors. My blood ran cold. I stumbled backward, but she was fast. Suddenly, another figure shot past me. It was Mike. I had no idea where he came from. He threw himself in front of me, taking the brunt of her attack. The scissors plunged into his arm. He cried out in pain but didn't back down, shielding me with his body until security guards, alerted by the commotion, came running and tackled Riley to the ground. At the hospital, as a doctor stitched up the deep gash in his forearm, he finally looked at me. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear. "I'm so sorry, Emma," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For everything. I know this doesn't make up for it, but I am so sorry." Riley was arrested and later sent for psychiatric evaluation. I told the police I didn't want to press charges against Mike for his part in the original scheme. Seeing him take a blade for me, it didn't erase what he did, but it was a payment of a debt, in its own way. He had been offered $1 million to destroy me, and in the end, he had sacrificed his own body to protect me. We didn't see each other for a long time after that. 2 years, in fact. We both had healing to do. Then, one day, I was at a coffee shop, sketching a design in my notebook, and a familiar voice said my name. It was Mike. He looked different. Calmer. The flashy, arrogant salesman was gone, replaced by a quieter, more thoughtful man. We started talking. We had coffee. Then dinner. Then more dinners. We took it slow, building something new and fragile on the wreckage of our past. He was honest about his flaws, about the greed that had almost led him to ruin my life. And I was honest about the scars his actions had left on me. A year later, he moved into my condo. A year after that, on a quiet Sunday morning, I found out I was pregnant. When I told him, he didn't panic like Stephen had. He knelt before me, put his hand on my still flat stomach, and tears of pure joy streamed down his face. He is a good man now. A good partner. He does the laundry, he cooks, he tells me he loves me every single day. He lives with a profound sense of gratitude, and a healthy dose of fear. Sometimes, when he's being particularly sweet, I'll smile and say, you know, the statute of limitations for conspiracy to commit fraud is 7 years. I've still got time. He just smiles back and kisses me. He knows I would never do it. He knows that our future is something we built together, honestly and carefully. When I walked away from their lives for the last time, I understood that good always wins over evil, and that we deserve a good life. Sometimes the hardest step isn't standing up to the bad guys, but allowing yourself to walk away from toxic people no matter who they are. Have you ever had similar experiences? Had to fight to protect yourself, to find your self-worth? I believe you deserve to live fully, without suffering from anyone's harm. Please comment "I deserve it" if you resonate with this journey. Each comment not only reminds you of your own worth but is also a source of strength for others who are listening and need the courage to walk away.